Hello, everyone. My name is Brody Hack, and welcome to my Ethics in Sports final presentation. I've had a ton of fun in this class. I'm glad this was my first course within the sports management program that I have just started. It gave me a lot of food for thought. It separates from sports the winning and losing element of it for me, and looks at it just from a behavioral perspective, which sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. We focus too much on the result and not enough on the process. So I really enjoyed the ability to be a little introspective in this course, look at the world of sports from an ethical standpoint, and kind of create my own personal ethics to move forward with in my career and take with me wherever I go. In examining my own personal ethics, the three concepts that I kept coming back to were that of fair play, integrity, and leadership. I think the reason that I focused so much on these throughout the course is because they really embody what I've always hoped sports could be, which is a place where everybody can compete on an even footing, where people can feel as though they are the best version of themselves, and where people can feel as though they're having an impact on those around them, that they're able to show others that there's a right and a wrong way to behave. And sports is a great microcosm of all of this, because it takes a lot of elements of our society and boils them down into 1 2 to 3 hour contests. So these three things really did mean a lot to me and stuck out and were constant fixtures in my discussion board posts and in the assignments that I wrote throughout the course. This is a photo of Hall of Fame second baseman Roberto Alomar being held back either right before or right after spitting in umpire John Hirschbeck's face following a disagreement over balls and strikes. We see these kinds of conflicts between players or coaches and officials quite frequently in sports, maybe not quite to this degree, but these kinds of arguments do happen. And I believe that a central reason why is that you have players or coaches who feel as though they are not being treated fairly, that the playing field is uneven, the other team is getting preferential treatment, and it's impacting their ability to succeed. And when wins and losses are as important as they are, especially at the professional sports level, you're going to get these kinds of outbursts when somebody feels as though they're being punished for something that's outside of their control. It goes to show how important fair play is to the legitimacy of contests. If the Baltimore Orioles really were getting the short end of the stick intentionally by umpire John Hirschbeck, which was not the case, but if it were the case, that contest lacks legitimacy. The outcome means nothing because it was altered artificially and has no real meaning. It's a central reason why fair play is so important, and why even the appearance of unfairness can really hurt the legitimacy of a sporting event. Few things hurt fair play in sports more than the use of performance-enhancing drugs. The fact that they're illegal and banned in pretty much all levels of sport, from high school to the pros to the Olympics, does very little to deter certain players. And until we have more reliable methods by which to catch cheaters, the playing field is going to be inherently uneven. It's going to consist of players who will use PEDs in order to gain an advantage and those who won't. But as long as they're expected to compete under the same set of rules, the players who won't are essentially being punished. And for me, it needs to go one of two ways. We either need to come up with better testing techniques that'll find these cheaters and expose them to punishment, or leagues need to understand that until we figure that part out, PEDs are going to be a part of the game, and they need to lift restrictions on them to at least give everybody an equal opportunity under the rules of the game to utilize those substances. Whether or not they choose to will still be their choice, but it wouldn't be because they'd be opening themselves up to punishment for using them. In the same vein, leagues need to find a way to differentiate between drugs of abuse and performance-enhancing drugs. Pictured on the right is probably former wide receiver Josh Gordon. He's been suspended numerous times for using marijuana, and his suspensions are similar to those for players who use PEDs. And until we can create a differentiation that shows the league understands the difference between PED use and marijuana use, this issue is going to persist because the problem is not going to be taken seriously. The two areas that I want to focus on regarding integrity are that of fan behavior and that of the concept of gamesmanship versus sportsmanship. This is a photo from a regular season contest between the New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs. You can see in the picture a number of Boston fans telling Tyreek Hill exactly what they think of the touchdown that he just scored against their team in not so uncertain terms. And we see this a lot where fan behavior becomes an actual part of the game and not in a positive way. You see fans, getting in trouble for racial slurs. You see fans fighting with each other. You see fans interfering with action on the field. And it all goes back to the integrity of the fan base as a whole. And every individual's ultimately responsible for their own actions, but it's this concept that if you're not actively impacting the game, then you're not doing your job as a fan. It's something that needs to go away. We need to be able to be civil in these scenarios, and this is clearly a photograph showing the opposite of civility. And it's a poor example for future fans. It's a poor example for people who are trying to behave themselves at these games, but they can get caught up in the emotion of it and the collectivism kind of grabs them. So fan behavior is a big part of integrity in sports and has a lot of room for growth. Gamesmanship versus sportsmanship is right at the center of the debate regarding integrity in sports. I think that it's important to understand, though, that both have their place within the contest. Sportsmanship is a key virtue within the athletic world. It's something that we teach our youngest athletes from the time they first pick up a ball to be a gracious loser, to be humble in victory. You want kids to enjoy themselves on the field. You want athletes at any level to enjoy themselves on the field. And sportsmanship is a big part of that. Anybody who can act in a sportsmanlike manner on the field has good integrity. They're somebody who believes in right versus wrong. And that's an important element of sport, and it's a big lesson that we're supposed to learn from sports. Sometimes right versus wrong, though, isn't quite as clear, and that's where the element of gamesmanship can come in. I think that there are certain kinds of gamesmanship that almost anybody would agree is just part of the game. Using sleight of hand or trying to deceive your opponent within the rules is perfectly acceptable. However, then you have the Bill Belichick style of gamesmanship where he videotapes opposing teams' practices or deflates footballs below the level that they're supposed to be inflated at, or uses illegal formations but does it in a way that is intended to trick the officials into not calling it. Those are things that, are varying levels of legal and illegal, but probably cross the line for most people from harmless gamesmanship to a lack of integrity. And, the less we see of that in sports, the better, but it's currently a pretty big part of what ails sports, in my opinion. And lastly, I think leadership is, to me, maybe the most important part of all this. And if we can act as ethical leaders, we can change the path that sports is taking. I think right now a lot of folks would agree that we're going down some dangerous roads in the way that we treat sports, the way that it's monetized, the way that results are put above and beyond ethical behavior. I think that a great phrase that I've heard a lot of times is be the example. Be the one that shows everybody else how things can be done. Not necessarily how they are done, but how they can be done. Be the example of what we can do as opposed to lowering yourself to the paradigm that already exists. If we can do that as future leaders in the world of sports, I think that goes a long way towards creating the world that we want to create and making the world of sports a better, more secure place. I want to thank everybody for sticking with me to the end here. It was a pleasure being in class with everybody, and I really did enjoy my first experience here with the University of Kansas. Rock Chalk Jayhawk.